Hey, aloha. Today is like a really big day for me because it's one of those great network marketing stories that looked like it wasn't going to go so well, and it's turned out to be incredible. Uh, just a great benefactor in my life, a great teacher. And I'm referring, of course, to Mike Healy, who hails from the Ohio area. And actually, the story is pretty fascinating. We were both with a company called Zango at the time. And for some reason, people had figured that Mike and myself were totally on the opposite sides of the fence. And there was this rivalry and this total disagreement about how the business should work. And Mike was at a retreat that the top earners were invited to here, actually, ironically enough, in Hawaii. And I bumped into Mike with Davine and his beautiful wife, Stacy, and I said, hey, you want to break bread? And it turns out that we almost felt congruent about everything. And a great friendship was born, which yielded much greater riches to me and Davine than merely financially. I asked Mike to come out and train my team in New England, and he reciprocated. We went out and we've broken bread several times. The thing that Mike has, and we're, of course, into the 6 behaviors that the superheroes have of MLM, they give them their power. And what we're going to talk about is recruiting. And I think what's really interesting about Mike's recruiting methodologies is they're short, simple, and he has a lot of fun. And that's led him to in excess of $5 million in earnings. And for somebody to have fun and make money, I'll tell you, it's really attractive. It always attracted me to Mike. And this great friendship and camaraderie was born. It turns out we had some of the same sufferings in our life. It was astonishing how parallel our stories actually were. Mike, we're so happy that you decided to do the summit because our relationship goes, now we're past 10 years. I mean, we met in I think 2006, 5 or 6 over here in Hawaii. So welcome to the summit. And how's everything going?
Everything's going great. Really appreciate you inviting me to be on here. Obviously, it's kind of, to me, it's kind of awesome to be doing this with you in the fact that I kind of knew you way back then and kind of how we met. And then obviously this has been 12 years since '06, obviously, how you've progressed and what you've put together and how many people, really have all these great things to say about you and stuff. And what was funny is, one of my business partner and a couple ventures that I'm very close with, a good friend of mine, he actually had mentioned, he didn't know that you and I actually knew each other, and he'd been talking about this guy that he'd been following for a while and just really got so much out of. And he says, this guy's name, everybody calls him Mark J. And I go, you kidding? And I'm like, I go, yeah, I know Mark J. And he's like, you're kidding. And I'm like, no, man, he's awesome. So it's kind of funny that we came all the way around there, and here's a guy that's talking about you with high accolades that I happen to be business partners with. So it's kind of cool. So it's going good. I'm out here in Columbus, Ohio. It's like 90 some degrees today, really, really hot, but I'm excited to be on here and do this with you.
Yeah. So recruiting, let's hop in for these people. You and I have talked about this before, so we don't have to spend a lot of time on it. Goals and attitude, and some people have done some fabulous stuff. They're not going to build a business. It's certainly goals or purpose is a reason to build a business, and it's certainly a lot easier with a good attitude than a bad attitude. But at some point, we need to talk to people, and you have really mastered this. So why don't we hop in and bring us through the recruiting cycle? And I think probably one of the best ways to start is the thing that's most difficult for people, and that is that initial conversation. So bringing up the business, take as many scenarios as you want, the bump into, the 3-way call, whatever, wherever you want to start.
Okay. And I'm going to give you, so everybody that's watching this, I'm going to give you permission to interrupt me if I'm going too long on a subject, or, we won't, so nobody thinks it's rude or Mark, I can't believe Mark interrupted you. So you get my permission. because you know how that goes, right? So,
Yep.
okay, so kind of with recruiting, and I'll kind of I'll go back a little bit in time and then kind of bring you up to speed, and then put you some, give some stuff that people can actually use and apply pretty much immediately. That's kind of what the purpose of this is. So the one thing that I had to figure out was when I first got into networking was like in 1994, and I watched some guys making some money. Some of them were just obnoxious amounts of money, which just kind of triggered the dream of getting involved in it. And over the span of a little over 20 plus years that I've been in networking, most of which I think almost all of it's been full time, I've personally enrolled over 1,300 people now. So it's not an accident that this stuff happens, and I don't think that I really do anything out of the norm than anybody else would do. Okay, so what I did do though was this: is I realized that I had to identify that I only had a certain amount of skills, based on my personality and stuff like that. And a lot of times I tried to be somebody that I wasn't. I wasn't really a super professional guy. I really wasn't a super patient guy in a lot of cases. And I had to figure out kind of where my strengths were and operate on those, because I see a lot of people in life, not just in networking, that the perfect example is, could you imagine what would happen if Jimi Hendrix picked up a guitar and was really cool with it because it just flowed? It was just something he was good at. But somebody said, you know what, you really ought to try harmonica because harmonicas are cool, and learn to, he would have really been bad at playing a guitar as opposed to taking time on it. So I just learned what my strengths were. The other thing I did was I bumped into a few people that were having success, and I tried to look for some common denominators and some things that they were doing that I could apply myself. Okay. And one of the best, probably best stories was, actually, let me go back a little farther in time. Very first big network marketing training I ever went to was in 1994. I drove to Atlanta, Georgia from Columbus with a handful of guys. It took us like 10 and a half hours to get there. And the one thing I brought out of there was probably to this day, I still use it in trainings, was the guy in his really hardcore hillbilly Georgia accent said, "You can't control how many tomatoes a tomato plant produces. You can only control how many tomato plants you plant." And for some reason that resonated with me. Okay. So I started to learn that, and then I picked up some skills. But one of the biggest turning points with me was when I met a guy that was in the second company I'd ever been involved in. And he was he was a few years younger than me. I think I was still in my 30s at the time. And he was just killing it. His organization was huge and so on. And this is back in the day where we still had paper downline reports, right? Where we had to actually look at paper sheets and stuff. Now everything's computer generated. And I said, I don't get it. I go, and we were buddies enough that I'm like, dude, you don't really seem like you've got more skills than me. I mean, what's the deal here? And he says, well, I'm going to show you something. He says, he goes, I'll tell you a couple things. I focus only on the things I can control, not on the things I can't. And I just continually recruit because I never know what somebody's going to do, which kind of brought back to memory the whole, tomato thing. And, so what I looked at was, he said, look at my downline report. He pulled out his downline report. And the first page of his downline report was the list of all of his personals. And he had sponsored at the time, in about a year's time, he'd sponsored almost 80 personals, which is really impressive, right? But he goes, I want you to notice something though. I want you to go through all of the people, and next to them, you could see the number of people they had each personally enrolled. So I go through them, and it's like Sue, 0, Larry, 0, Todd, 5, Ray, 1, Bill, 2, Lisa, 6, Justin, 28, and then like this, right? And so out of the 80, maybe 3 or 4 of them had sponsored more than 10 or more, right? So I go, and he goes, now I want you to go to the guy that has the biggest number of in-person enrollments there. And I did, and I went there, and sure enough, he said, I want you to see if you see a pattern there. Same exact scenario. This guy had sponsored 20 some personals, and some of them did something, some of them didn't. And so looking at it from that standpoint, the one thing that my pastor said that was another kind of aha moment to me was because I hear a lot of people talk about, training their downline, and don't get me wrong with this, or don't take this the wrong way. Building skills builds your check, period. Okay. If you don't have recruiting skills, if you don't have people skills, your check stays low. But what my pastor said one time, he said, the thing that you owe your people the most, really the biggest thing you actually owe your people above everything else is an example of success, which kind of took the pressure off of me to be this super trainer. Okay. So, cause that was one of the problems that I had was a lot of times it's how do you get somebody started? Right. But then I thought to myself, I'm like, nobody showed me how to get started. Like I actually, to my first network marketing company, the true story, the guy invited me to a presentation, first hotel meeting. I thought it was a job interview because I'd never heard of network marketing. And I said, I called him. He said, yeah, we're going to go on Tuesday. So I call him and he said, hey, I can't go. I'm fighting with my girlfriend. And I said, okay. So the guy didn't take me because he was fighting with his girlfriend. So a week goes by and I still have this in my head. And I call him back and I said, hey, are you going to that meeting tonight? I wanted to go with you. And he goes, dude, I'm fighting with this other girl now. I'm like, and he didn't take me the second week. Third week, so I've called this guy 3 weeks in a row to take me to a hotel meeting. When you ever heard of that? The third week, he goes, oh, they both dumped me. Let's go. And so he took me. That's how I actually recruited myself. So I look back on that and I think, it wasn't that somebody was so flashy. It wasn't that somebody said something magical. It wasn't somebody was a great presentation. In fact, the guy that gave the presentation was so boring. I would have rather watched paint dry. And it was 45 minutes long, but the last page of the last 5 minutes of the presentation of me like this, he was like, I'm thinking, okay, when's the bar open? When can I get out of here? The last 5 minutes was the page that showed the money on there. Well, apparently that was something inside of me that was the desire that tripped the switch, that tripped the trigger that got me, because I originally was in the bar business at this time. I'd been a bouncer and bartender for, going on 8 years, and I wanted out of it. So to me, it was more of what was inside of me that was my desire, my thing. And I've just noticed that when I personally, I'm trying to get back to the beginning here. I have just personally take the responsibility that I introduce as many people to this as I can. And the people that want to do it raise their hands, because it's way easier to lead someone across the finish line, giving them the right tools, tricks, systems, and so on, than it is to try to do a weekend at Bernie's, as you would say, and throw them on their back and try to carry them across. And that's why I've consistently, over the last 10 years at least, I've never been in a company that I've never recruited at least 100 personals, some in multiple hundreds. And now I'm really can speed this thing up because I know a lot of other, lead generating skills and so on. But to me, it all came down to, you can't control you can't control you can't, pick the duds from the studs, the zeros from the heroes. You really have no idea who's going to do what. And the only reason I've had the success, and I think this is why I don't have a problem telling people this, is I just learned recruiting skills. I know that, that I can just outwork people by that. And then the ones that say, you know what, this is for me, I want to know something. Those are the people I give all my attention to. I don't, I was thinking of this today. I knew we had this call going on. I'm thinking of some examples I could give. Lifetime Fitness. I go to Lifetime Fitness, right? A big facility. It's a nationwide chain of fitness places. And just here in Columbus alone, I think there's like 5 of them, right? They probably have 100 to 200, maybe even more, 100,000 members, right? Why is it that every time I go to the gym, there's maybe 50 of the same people? Everybody's got the same opportunity. So it's not like the gym doesn't work. It's just people decide they don't want to work or they don't want to. The only people watching your videos are people that want to know these skills, and they're the ones that are going to have the same success stories down the road. Last thing, and then I'll let you talk because you can ask me questions like I said. The other thing that convinced me that I was on the right track was when we were in Zango. I don't know if I think you were there when we went to the Park City. There was a big event at Park City where they had just the leaders that came out to it.
Yep.
So we're into this big leader thing where we're all, the wine and dine of the top elite of the lead, all the 7-figure earners. Right. And I thought to myself, I'm like, man, I am in a room with some of the best networkers in the world. I know like a couple of guys that made, tens of millions of dollars in the industry. So they had given us these little notebooks. I don't know if you remember the little orange leather bound notebooks.
Yep.
And I ran around the meeting for 3 hours and I asked everybody one question. I walked up to everybody that I could think of, and I asked them this. I said, what is the number one thing you would attribute to your success? And then whatever came out of their mouth first, I wrote it down because I was thinking to myself, that's what's in their heart, and out of their heart, the mouth speaks, right? So I'd write that down, wrote that down. And then as soon as they said that, I just took off. I said, thanks, I really appreciate it. And they'd start laughing, and off I went. And I'd find another person. I just went around the room. So I had this huge list. And the number one thing that was the common denominator, there was a few people that tweaked the little things, but the number one common denominator wasn't the website they had, wasn't the presentation tool they were using, wasn't the CD they were handing out, wasn't the fancy brochure. It was consistency. The number one thing they all had in common was they were consistent. And you would know who I'm not going to say his name, but the number one money earner in that company, as he was getting on the bus, I ran up to him. I said his name. He looked at me and I said, hey, what's the number one thing you would attribute to your success? He looks at me as he's walking on the bus. He says, that's easy. I swing the bat as many times as I have to. Occasionally I get a hit. Every once in a while I hit one out of the park, and on the bus he went. And I've said that hundreds, if not thousands of times to people in trainings. So all I had to do, so what I did, and I have a formula if you want to go into detail on it, but I think it's good to build a base here of it. To me, it's just, I work the numbers, and the numbers work. I try to think like Babe Ruth. Babe Ruth is known for home runs, not for strikeouts, even though he led the league in strikeouts. So the only reason that I am more successful than the average guy or even anybody typically else is because I'm willing to talk to more people and just at least start a conversation. So
right. It sounds like, let me see if I can get to this for newer people or people that are struggling. What you're saying is, and this is right out of Wooden for me, is, who taught, the more concerned I am about the things I can't control, the less I'll do about the things I can control. So you found a way mentally to take the pressure off yourself. And instead of living and dying with, if I get Sally in, my life's going to be great, you just did your job, which is talk to people rather than invest time in wondering how many tomatoes were going to come out of that plant.
absolutely.
And you seem to feel that takes a lot of pressure off you.
Right. And I'll give you my formula if you want it right now.
Love it.
Okay. 5 steps. Somebody wants to write these down. It's real simple. It's on all my trainings and all my videos and my websites and my book on Amazon, whatever, right? My 5 steps are prospect, contact, present, follow up, and repeat. So that's kind of the formula that I put around. Like I would watch people and I thought about how they went through it. And so mine was prospect, contact, present, follow up, and repeat. Prospect is just who I'm going to talk to. Prospect contact is how I'm going to initiate the conversation. Mm-hmm. Present is what I'm going to use to do it. Follow up with them is obviously no brainer, and then repeat. Okay. So for years, so I'll give you an example. This is a true story. I won a company recruiting contest in a 6-month window that paid me $50,000 just the bonus alone, let alone I was never the top recruiter in any of those months out of the 6 months, but I came in second twice. But what did I say about consistency?
Right.
Because I stayed consistent for 6 months, I overall was the number 1 recruiter and won the $50,000 bonus.
Right.
And I did this, you ready for this? In the fall, like late summer, early fall, while watching my boys play practice football. So my boys were still in Pee Wee football. I would drive them there, and I would sit on a little lawn chair out by the trees so I could stay in the shade. They're out there playing football. I'm being a dad, having a great time, loving watching football. And I would make phone calls. And here's what my steps were at this time. I use different techniques now. But my phone call was simply this. If your phone rang, it would go ring, ring. You'd say hello, and I'd say, hey, Mark, it's Healy. How you doing? Oh, great. I go, listen, I know you're busy, and I'm not going to take up any of your time, but do you mind if I send you an email? And that's all I would ask. And nobody ever said no. I think I had one person in 20 years say no, right? And I wish I would have wrote their name down, because I would have put a plaque on the wall that this guy was the one, right? And then what I would do is I would go, great. And I would just, on a yellow pad, not a computer, wrote down their name, their phone number, and then their email address, right? Well, then what I would do is I would do this throughout practice. I would just, find people on my phone, think of who I knew, and I would just call them and ask permission to send them an email. And my email was so brilliantly written. Are you ready for this? Mark, thanks for letting me send you this email. Check out this website and watch this video. Thanks, Mike. Pretty genius, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so all I did was that. Now, here's the thing. Those were tasks and things that I knew I could consistently do. My goal was to make, at this time when I was doing the contest, to send out a minimum of, make enough calls that I spoke on the phone to 10 people that would say, give me permission. And I usually shot for 15 to 20 in a day, but depending, but I usually wouldn't stop unless I got to 10. I wouldn't go to 9 and say, okay, I'll do 11 tomorrow. But here was the important thing, was it wasn't the phone call that I was looking for, because every bit of my methodologies are not about signing someone up. They're small baby steps to lead someone down the journey, it's a customer journey is what you kind of call it in marketing terms. But I'm trying to lead people from point A to point B, and everything I do should only have one event attached to it.
Right.
I want you to say, yes, I can send you an email. When I follow up with you, so the phone would, so when I got home, I would send those emails, right? Now it's even easier. So if you use the same methodology, I literally have recruited, 20 some people in the last 30 days by doing this on a text. I would text the message, say boom, 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 that asked a simple one, you have a yes or a no question or answer from you or whoever. And then when they said it, I would just copy and paste what I'd already written down. Mm-hmm. Great. Thanks for letting me send you this. Watch the video on this. And that because here's the thing is if you look at farmers aren't freaking out when they throw seeds out there, right? Farmers can't tell if one's going to grow or not, but the most important thing for the farmer is to plant enough seeds to actually get a harvest of any kind. Might be a dry winter, might be a dry summer, some of it might be fertile. You might be in something that really resonates with people and gets more response. But that was just my methodology was prospect, contact, present, follow up. And my follow up was simply this. Follow up was just a matter of saying, ring, ring, and you answered. I say, hey, Mark, this is Mike Healy. Is now a good time? Number one thing I say before I ever talk to anybody when I talk to them on the phone is now a good time, because I don't want the baby crying in the background. I don't want them to put the kids to bed. I don't want them, getting ready to walk into a, DMV and shoot themselves or whatever it might be, right? I say stuff like that and say, yeah, now's a great time. Next question, did you have a chance to look at the information? Because again, you've said it probably a billion times, I want to be the messenger, never the message. I want to be the messenger, never the message. Again, this controls my ability to stay dumb in this industry and to dumb it down to the point that I let tools do all the work for me. I mean, I have that. So and you could use what they call sizzle videos, websites, brochures you're sending out. Doesn't matter what that stuff is. And then if we want, we can go into kind of dialogue and how I think. So is that?
Yeah, no. This is fantastic. And I know the answer to this question, but I think they need to hear it from you too. Because they're going to hear it from, if they were in a room, like we were out in Park City, and that was great. We got to go to the film festival, Sundance Film Festival, which is Davine's favorite thing. But basically, you got someone that is D+, C- with skills, but making 90 minutes of calls every day, 6 days a week, and someone who's A with skills, really glib, really quick on his feet, but is making calls on Monday, and then maybe he'll do some on Thursday, and then maybe the following Tuesday. Who are you betting your business on?
D guy, absolutely, first guy.
Yeah, the first guy. So consistency, because, tell me if you agree with this. 3 things happen, right? The person with C- D+ skills, when they're making calls, they're making calls because they're bringing questions to you. They're bringing people to you. They're going to get better. Number 2, the one that struggled to learn the skills, they become the best teachers of it because they have empathy. And three, they're setting that example that you talked about for the people that they enroll. Because when they see someone that's not a superstar, certainly you and I were just, you and I were just guys. We're average guys that decided, for about a couple hours a day, I'm not going to behave like an average guy. I'm just going to do my job and not be concerned. So I'm hearing a couple of wonderful things. You weren't attached to the results of the entire process, but just with each step.
Correct. And I think this might, I'll see where you can fit this in. But if you think about it too, I think there's too much emphasis on the back office lag indicator information versus the front, which is the lead indicator information. Like to me, I would personally, and this is, like if I was, when I'm talking to my team,
Right.
I would rather edify someone, not that sponsored somebody, but I would rather edify someone who made 10 contacts.
Yeah.
Because what you reward is repeated, right? And
Yep.
so I had to go back and figure out myself what were the most important core tasks is really what it came down to. I had to identify what the primary core tasks that were income generating skills, as we've all heard. And then all you got to do is memorize track 6 on how to build a network marketing business by Jim Rohn, the law of averages, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you and I could probably do most of it verbatim if we stood there and started one part of it.
If we had to.
We could literally probably do it. And that was just stuff that I was like, okay, I can do that. I can do that. And you know what it is too, is when I didn't focus on the results, but I focused on the activity because I knew that the activity eventually produced the result. Same thing. I work out all the time. I know that I knew that when I first walked into the gym and I couldn't curl, 20 pounds back in high school, that, I knew that if I stayed consistent, I might be able to curl 50 eventually. And I did. I was actually up to curling 65s and 70s at one time.
Right.
You know what I mean? I mean, so it was just those kind of things. But and the other thing too is, to me, is activity matters most. I don't care what it is. Activity matters most. And I told a couple of my business partners, and I proved it out. I mean, I said, look, I'm just going to start making noise of some sort. Whether it's posting on a regular basis on Facebook or, sending out a tweet or doing a conference call, even if they suck, I don't care. I'm just going to do something, right? Because if you think about it, if somebody stands out, like if somebody stood outside my door right now and just hammered away at a tree with a bat, right? I would ignore them for a little bit.
Right.
Then it would start getting annoying. And then I would finally get up, leave you, and walk down and go, what in the world are you doing?
Exactly.
I'm making noise and I got your attention. You know what I mean? I mean, it's kind of a dumb analogy. But
no, it's not. I get it. And I think what's really important is, and, I've talked about this on one or two of the calls. To me, a network marketer that doesn't get this book is missing the boat. And Mike has obviously either read this and or intuitively understood the principle behind it, because what we want to do is not persuade. If you persuade people to join, you're going to have to re-persuade them every time you talk to them. We're talking about influence. And in this book is it's the most remarkable book I've ever read. It has nothing to do with network marketing, but it has everything to do with it. The great influencers never focus on results, which is what Mike is saying. They reward the behaviors, because the correct behaviors are going to lead the results, and the company rewards the results with a check. And so, Mike, I think it's so brilliant. This is just so imperative, what Mike is sharing with you right now.
It's right over there on my shelf.
Yeah.
Like I literally have read the first probably 5 chapters.
Unbelievable.
10 times.
It's unbelievable, isn't it?
Well, when I was introduced to it for the first time and I read it, I was just starting a company, and it just went like this. Like I knew I was on track, but then it was like this bigger piece of the puzzle. People don't read that want to make big money. Right. You don't have to. If you want to make okay money, don't read it. It's a waste of your time, because you're not there mentally. If you want to make big money, you will sponge it. You will apply it and you will get it, and it'll open up a paradigm that you didn't know existed.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah, reward the behaviors, the right behaviors. So you're teaching the right behaviors. And I loved what you said about your MDC, whatever your phraseology is, minimum
Minimum
daily
daily
contact was 10, and he didn't end at 9 and say, I'll do 11 tomorrow. He doesn't make that false promise. Because I'll tell you something about Mike that we talked a little bit about, and he said, that was a long time ago, which is another thing that's really important. What happened yesterday, Mike has always had the ability to put it behind him. That was yesterday. All he got's today. But Mike did lift consistently in the gym, and was a bodybuilder, and was a winner. And it all comes from consistency. So we got your 5 things, and your 5 rules, or your 5-way system there. I love it. I couldn't agree with it more. And obviously, that brings us to the thing that everybody wants to know about, the dialogue.
Okay,
So,
perfect. I'm glad you brought that up.
You bring us 2 ways. Harry Harry hasn't had a chance to look at it. What do you do there? And Harry has had a chance to look at it. What do you do there? Let's start with the first one.
Ring, ring. Hey, Harry, Mike Healy, is now a good time? Yes. Hey, did you have a chance to watch that information? No, I didn't. Oh, man, okay. Well, it would be like giving a haircut over the phone if I tried to do this myself. So why don't I jump off the phone, and if you get a chance, watch it in the next 24 hours, and I'll call you tomorrow. Is that cool? Yeah, sure. Okay, no problem. Click. That the kiss of death is in most people when the guy says no. They panic. They go like this, and then they start being the message. And I learned not to do that because I try to do it all the time, and it didn't work. Now, here's the thing. When you say, yeah, I did, the next question out of my mouth is, what did you like best? I'm sure you probably said that. I just asked, I said, wow, great. What'd you like best about what you saw? And the reason I say that is I have to identify not what because I might be 100% focused on the income, the opportunity. I want to talk pay plan, structure. Is it the unilevel pyramid, binary, super, whatever? But this guy was all product, right? If I start regurgitating all that, I've lost him and the conversation's over. So the thing that I've noticed the most that I think why I close so many people is I have learned how to be an extremely good listener. Okay. And I think what happens is because people want everybody, you guys should know this. If you've been in networking longer than an hour or two, that if you're doing all the talking, the opportunity is not really going to work unless somebody is constantly asking you questions. So there's a difference there. But typically it's me interviewing them. And if done correctly, I never have to do anything. I literally ask them questions. Like one of the funniest stories, and I told it in front of a large group of people, and the exact guy that this happened with was in the room. And when I was done with the story, raised his hand and goes, that was me. Place went nuts. It was hilarious. But I have an appointment with this guy. I wanted to follow up. I go meet with him. And I sat down and I said, hey, how's it going, Steve? And he's like, oh, man, da-da-da-da-da. And I said, well, tell me about this, right? And so I got my presentation booklet and everything like that. And I'm prepared. I'm ready to give a presentation. And the guy, this is not an exaggeration, he talks for 45 straight minutes. And I may have talked a total of a minute and 30 seconds in that whole 45 seconds. At the end of the 45 seconds, he just sits back in his chair and says, well, you know what? I'm ready to get in. I think I'm ready to do this. I'm like, man, that's awesome. And I had to do it without laughing.
Yeah.
But he had talked his way into there. But it taught me. It also continued to teach me something. One, it taught me patience because, as you can see, I like to talk if I'm rolling. But more importantly, was people have their own dialogues in their head the entire time you're doing something. People are asking themselves the 2 big questions: can I do it, and is it worth doing? Well, can I do it, and is it worth doing? Typically comes from the fact if I ask them enough questions, they'll answer all of these objections, all of these concerns themselves, and then I let them kind of do the thing. But the biggest thing is, I think it's in this book you just referenced, The Influencer. I'm almost positive. was that when I am on the phone or when I'm in person with anybody, the number one thing is that they have a good experience with me. No matter what, I try to joke around almost the whole time. Like I did a three-way for a really, really, a large seven-figure, like a person in my organization that's trying to recruit a seven-figure earner. And they would ask me questions that I kind of knew, but I didn't, because, on some things like scientific product in questions or whatever. And I kind of I would just joke about it and I would get them laughing. Right.
Right.
And you get them laughing because people, whether it's in a home meeting, whether it's in a live event or everything, people don't remember the details. They remember how they felt. They remember the experience, how I treated them, how I interacted with them on the phone. Steve signed himself up because he talked for 45 minutes because no one else probably would have listened to him that week. I just happened to be fed. I wasn't hungry. I didn't have to go to the bathroom, and I was able to just kick back and relax and let Steve talk himself into the opportunity on whatever tangent he wanted to talk about. And I would laugh, smile at his jokes, things like that. It's the same thing on the telephone. Is when I would follow up with people, I would ask them, "What'd you like best? Tell me about that. Where do you see yourself?" One of the best money earners I ever met. I asked him some big questions. How his success was. He always talked in "Can you imagine?" He would always get them to, when he would ask them a question, he'd say, "You know what, Mark, can you imagine what you would, how you would feel?" Like he would say that, "Can you imagine, Mark, how you would feel if you pulled into your driveway with a new Mercedes?" And then you'd shut up and you'd listen and you'd make Mark answer that question, an emotional question, because it's not about the 7 generations you get paid 3% on and a 5% override. I never talk about that stuff. You'll never hear me talk about it. I talk about what you desire. Mark, let me ask you something. How cool would it be to fly first class from Hawaii to Columbus, Ohio to come see me next time because you got some extra coin? Do you know what they do in first class? And I get you thinking about it. Can you imagine how good that would be? Can you imagine, how cool it would be to pay cash for your kid's college? Because you told me about that in the conversation earlier. So it's all about, read that book, Influencer, but it's the core tasks, identifying the wants of somebody, being a good listener, and making sure they have a good experience. Like nobody that has a conversation with me on the phone ever comes away. And that's why I always get people to call me back, because I'm short. When I'm on the phone, I rush them off in a lot of cases, but they have a good experience every time I interact with them. That's why most of the time people like to talk to me and they go, I want to work with you. Well, I don't feel like I bring anything extraordinary to the table that, you couldn't find from 10 other people that are super, super well organized and super trainers and all that. I just have learned to be consistent, polite, generous, listener, having fun with the thing. I can't tell if you're a dud or a stud. You'll tell me later.
Right.
I'll figure it out by your actions, and then I'll edify your actions. If I see that you're taking the right activity, I'm going to edify your activity first and foremost, and that's a different conversation.
Well, one of the things, that I think is important, and I'd like you to expand on how you do it. Let's get down to some technique for these people, because the idea is that when we're the message, okay, we're probably going to run to the things that we're most comfortable with, which might be completely different than what they're interested in. So Mike's established, what did you like best? He never asks them, what did you think? If they'd been thinking before Mike met him, they'd already be in some deal, right? So
Right.
What did you like best? And at this point, it's giving you a direction. But what I see you're doing that's brilliant is people think in pictures, and when they're thinking in pictures, they have feelings about those pictures. And when you can link a feeling to a picture, then the risk to reward ratio, any perceived risk gets smaller and the reward gets higher if they're the one that's painting the picture, not you. And so I see that you're doing that. You're getting them to think in pictures and asking them how they feel. Can you give us some of the questions or some of the techniques that you use around that specifically? Guy
Yeah.
says, the money seemed pretty interesting to me, how do you move him off from how do I get paid into that Mercedes or into
Okay.
watching Jack and Jill walk across stage with their diploma and no debt? How do you transition into that?
Okay. This I think is very, very important. Is I always, in any questions or anything, I always ask myself, is there a tool that I can send them or point them to that answers the questions in more detail or better than I could? Okay. I think a lot of times now, and this is, I can almost prove this out, and I wish somebody would officially track it and it would be a legitimate thing. If you think about it, the majority of people sign up, the majority of their personals in the first 60 to 90 days that they join a company. In my opinion, the problem that they have and why their sign up ratio goes down is not lack of leads, not lack of context, and so on, is they get smart. What I mean by that is they start learning, they learn data, they learn information, and they deviate from enthusiasm. They deviate from enthusiasm, which is what signed those people, because you didn't know anything when your first week, when you signed up 5 people. You were excited. You were excited. That's what I see happen. So what I've done is now, and I'm kind of past the point that I actually look for tools. I actually create my own now. So like I made recently for a company, my company I'm in, I made a comp plan video because I know how to dumb it down to where anybody could do it, and it answers every little thing. And I don't go into super grand poobah how they get to that level. I show them how they can get their product free or get their money back or make a little bit of money, right? The basics, because if you focus on the basics are just building blocks that get you to the grand poobah level, right? So what I did with that is I would just ask questions, and you might have to get me back on track to what I was talking about because I was thinking of the same thing as you were asking a question. But I've learned, the other thing too is if I send you a tool or a video, because now I have just videos saved on YouTube or whatever, and all I got to do is take the link. You just asked me about the comp plan. I'm like, man, they got a great comp plan. I'm enthusiastic about the tool and the comp plan, not what I'm about to say. Because at the same time, if you know that I can answer every little detail about dynamic compression, 7 generations of check matches, or whatever it might be, you think you have to know that before you talk to your prospect, Larry.
Right.
And the reason people sign up with me and the reason I get so many people in so quickly and consistently, that's why when I put 40 people in my first 35 days, and then my year down the road, I still put another 40 in a month or whatever, it's not because I got smarter. It's because I stayed dumber on purpose. I didn't get myself into the equation. So I'm enthusiastic about a tool that I know will answer that thing, whether it's how good is the product on here? Will I grow new hair and my eyesight come back? I have no idea, but I really heard a cool conference call on it. You'd probably love it, man. I thought it was fantastic. I'll text it to you right now. Boom. Guess what Jerry can do every single day of the week? He can get excited about the tool and send it to somebody. And the reason I'm so focused on the tools too, and it cracks me up is, and I think some of it's ego-based and some of it's just newbie-based on leaders that are up and coming, is a lot of people want to be the queen bee. That's this term I use. They want to be the go-to person that everybody comes to with questions and answers, right? Like they Mike knows it all. I'm awesome, right? I don't want that. I joined network marketing for freedom, not for you to call me every 2 seconds, right? So if I have a tool, and stuff in place that I can direct you to, and you know exactly how to get it, where to get it, when to get it, and you teach your team how to get it and get it fast and get it done, my phone hardly rings. My groups grow, but my phone hardly rings because I've conditioned the people that I brought in. This is how you do it. You the whole time I'm doing everything is the same process they're going to do. They're not going to answer every question. They're going to keep it, dumb it down. They're going to have some fun on the phone. They're going to direct people to a tool call, sale, whatever it might be. And that's kind of how I do it myself.
Well, one of the things that I'm hearing, no, I got it, and I'll bring you back around the mountain here, but because I think this is actually a more important point. The dialogue is important, but this is critical. You know, one of the things that Mike and I talked about way back in 2006, where we found incredible, not common ground, but congruent ground, is what you really should be hearing here, folks. I hope you're getting this. It's brilliant. It's just brilliant, Mike. Mike is not thinking about recruiting and duplicating as separate things. By doing it this way, he's already setting up someone who hasn't even joined yet for success, because that person knows, oh, I can send a video out, because your couple of questions are pretty the same as mine. I think when people look at a business, it's very similar. Can I make any money? What would I have to do? Can I do it? You know, that's it. And so Mike is teaching them that they can do it, instead of being the oracle of Delphi with all the information. Not only is he saving time, he's also really doing something that I hadn't thought of before. This is brilliant. By being quick, he's starting to erode the excuse, I don't have the time to build this thing. Instead of spending 45 minutes explaining it, he said, oh, I'll shoot you this video. You're going to love it. And his enthusiasm about the tool, folks, that's pure gold that he's giving you right there. So you're having this conversation. He watches a video. He tells you what he likes best about it. It has to do with the money. And you want to get him to build that reward potential in his limbic system, which is where the decision's really made. That's the part of our brain that evaluates the reward potential of a judgment call. And Mike isn't the message about how their life can be better. He is letting them paint that picture and link an emotional response to the picture that they're painting. How do you transition to that? You're having a conversation with Harry. What kind of questions do you ask when Harry wants to get into details? And you've sent him the video, and now you're back on the phone with him.
Okay, back to just something that popped in my head. I think it's good to share. They've scientifically proven that 80% of all buying decisions are emotional, 10% logical, and then like 10% of something else. They purchase based on emotion. They justify based on logic. Okay, so that's why it's so important. And I know you teach all that anyhow. But go back to that question, because that was in my head, and I'm sorry.
Yeah, the techniques and the questions that you use to get Harry to paint this mental picture, because I can't stand network marketers, leaders, and companies where, you know, the first 4 minutes of the video, it feels like it's a nice thing, but it's really a negative thing, you know, because we're telling another human being that they should be a better dad, take their family on more vacations. You know, they're trying to hit this broad base, and then that is us trying to shove what can happen for them. You seem to have the ability and some techniques to draw a mental picture out of what would make their life better. How do you do that?
That all just comes down, honestly, to asking questions. I mean, it's as third grader as that is I don't think enough people ask people questions. And, you know, it's so funny is you can look like a complete recruiting genius by just learning how to ask questions and not knowing squat, you know, because people will, and then typically people will ask similar questions. So you kind of hear the same ones and the same concerns, the same issues over and over. And so you kind of subconsciously remember those things, as people throughout the years have asked me the same things, and I kind of know. But at the same time, I think the one thing that you can always do better if you're now in a position to talk is talk with a story. I mean, you know, third grader again, facts tell, stories sell, right? But you know, I think it is real important that when somebody does ask me something, I typically try to find not what happens to me, but I try to find a story about someone else that I know. because then I become the object of the issue kind of thing. I guess I
Yep.
don't, I want to always try to keep it off me, because if it's me, then they think it has to be them, my prospect, to have success. Well, when I got in, I went to work. I started recruiting. I made 20 grand in a day. That's how I did it. And they're thinking to themselves, man, I'm screwed. There ain't no way I'm done.
Right.
But if I say, you know what, I was just on a conference call and I heard a guy in the same boat that you're in, that got in, and he's now generating like $500 a week, and he's talking about how he gets to go to his boys' baseball things, just like you. That's the goal. That's all it is that stuff. So it's every conversation's different. Let me put it to you that way. It's not like I have a written script. There are certain things you can use. I don't have a problem with scripts or anything like that. I think they're a great way to kind of memorize things that you can help trigger a conversation if you get stuck.
Right. The dialogue.
Yeah, with the keep the dialogue going. But I just try to kind of keep peeling the onion.
Yeah.
Because what they typically say is the real thing, or the real reason they're not in is not it. And you got to just keep peeling that onion by asking more questions until and you'll have people, typically the people you see on stage that are making the biggest checks were asked 4 or 5 times to get in, but it wasn't until somebody finally peeled the onion all the way back and found the real thing that tripped their trigger. It helped that person then identify their hot spot. And when that person finally, with their brain or whatever, I don't know, in their heart, identified their hot spot, that's what created the unstoppable rep.
Right.
They didn't want the product is great. They love the product, right? Product's been working. They're doing good on the product. That's not what they're passionate about. But when somebody peeled the onion back and found out that, hey, if they went and told enough people about it, not only did they get the product for free, but they could make enough money to pay for little Johnny's college, which they were really, really stressed about. Super rep just all of a sudden was born,
Right.
And they couldn't, and by the time you see them sick, in a year later, they probably still couldn't understand a comp plan, have no idea how it works, have no idea how they got promoted. I mean, you and I are perfect examples of that. When I went to one of the biggest leaders events when we were in the last company out in Hawaii, and I was talking to some of these guys, half of the guys, minimum of half of them, had no idea how they got paid in the comp plan. I mean, I know how to dissect that stuff, and I'm good at it, but I've learned how to dumb it down to where I don't explain it. But half of them they couldn't tell you how they got paid, had no idea how people were in their organization, didn't know how they got promoted, because that's not what drove them. What drove them was that burning thing inside that made them take action consistently.
Right. So I want to back up to something, folks, because you might have missed it. And Mike has been around a long time. As you can tell, you can see why he earns what he earns and why he's having a good time and why he's still going to his son's ball games, has time for his family. And, as an aside, Mike's been very active. I actually met your minister or pastor over here. He was in Hawaii. We had a great time. But basically, what Mike does, and this is just a brilliant technique, is he doesn't make himself the story. He tries to find someone who has a similar success story that this woman or guy would like to have, uses the third party to get them to start to paint the picture. And your example there, there's a guy in a very similar situation. I heard him on a conference call. He's now making $500 a week, and he's thinking a little bit bigger, and it looks like he's going to be able to help his son through college. So if you've picked up that information, that third party is just a great way to tell a story, but to get him back to imagining. So then you'd follow it up with one of your normal questions that I've learned from you. What do you think it would feel like to watch Jill walk across stage debt-free?
Absolutely.
And then we're there, right? We're there.
Yeah.
Mike, this has just been absolute gold. I know I can't wait to hear this again. I usually get about 3 lines of notes. I got about 2 pages here. This is great stuff. A couple of big takeaways here is consistency. Okay. And we all know that with consistency, if we're honest with ourselves, we're going to improve. So not only was Mike consistent, but I think your little metaphor or analogy about you couldn't curl 20 pounds and and you end up winning bodybuilder contests later. It didn't happen because you watched other people lift. You got
Right.
in the gym. You got in the gym every day. So consistency is huge, because that's going to help you day by day, incrementally get a little bit better at the skills. The second huge thing is a minimum daily contact, and don't bargain with yourself. I got that. It hasn't been going well. You're getting a lot of answering machines. Keep going until you hit that number every day. I believe it gives you an insurmountable advantage. This is just great. Don't be the message. Just be the messenger, and let the tools do the work, because Mike has brilliantly fused together both recruiting and duplicating. He's not thinking about duplicating without recruiting, and he's not thinking about recruiting without duplicating. And so he's implanted, if you will, a mental or subconscious blueprint. Harry already knows all Mike did was shoot me 4 or 5 videos and kept calling me and asked me what I liked best. I think I can do that. Just great stuff. And the number one thing, and I know this about you to be true, is that the mindset in recruiting is make sure that every call is a good experience for the other person. And then the great wisdom inside everything that's a huge takeaway for me. I love this. I'd never heard it before. I don't know how many tomatoes are going to grow out of that plant. I can only control how many tomatoes I put in, which is an update on Buddha, who said, be detached from the outcome. Just do your job, do your best. And, whatever's supposed to happen is going to happen. But if you keep planting seeds, some tomato plants are going to come up with a big yield. It's really that simple. And if you do it the way Mike's talking about, tools, 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 don't be the star, don't be the oracle, keep it simple, keep it short, something wonderful will happen for you. And what that really is that you will grow confidence in yourself. And that's really the game. Mike, we're so grateful that you took the time out of your day to do this. If you could, 1 or 2 do's or don'ts. I mean, one of the themes in this whole summit is let people like Mike and Don and Dan and all the other speakers you've heard from, let them have made these mistakes for you. So if you knew then what you know now, what would be 1 or 2 do's or don'ts that you might want to pass on?
I would say probably the biggest do was when I joined a company to take hard and heavy attack mode action for at least the first 6 months, as hard as I could possibly run. Because in network marketing, momentum is a real thing, a real thing in the organization, in your business. And I see so many people that get in and they hobby train it. They do it on the weekends. They do it when it's convenient and so on. But I've learned, and it has never failed me. Hasn't. And when I started to pick up on this, and I did it probably 10 years ago, never failed. When I go hard and heavy for at least 6 months or more, as best I can, I always get the numbers to just go like this, and all of a sudden the tipping point hits. And I could literally go through the numbers, because I don't make decisions any longer now. Like when I'm doing stuff, especially with online stuff, I make data-driven decisions instead of opinion-based decisions. And I know that I can watch my numbers in any company, and that's one thing why I've always learned, why I learned to be a good recruiter, because when I realized that if I just recruited enough people, someone was going to see it like I did, and I just did it as fast as I could. It might take me 90 days to get that one person. It might take me 9 months or whatever to do it. But when I found them, it just exploded. And it's never failed. I mean, I've never made, in fact, in the last 10 to 15 years, I've never made less than $100,000 in any company annually. I think the largest month I ever had was like 90,000 in 1 month, that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And I'm not saying it to brag. And I've had plenty of months where $1.50. I didn't make any money, or I was at the top of the hill and something happened and, I didn't make it. But I really think that, you know, just taking that initial action as hard and heavy as you can. Sprint, sprint, sprint. I know network marketing is always taught about being a marathon. I would say, though, you sprint like crazy to get a lead going. And then if you want to jog a little bit, that's fine. But I just think it's important to not cut your grass one strip every day. Cut that lawn and get it done today, as you know, and stay consistent with those numbers. That's why I shot for 10, because that number was big enough that I knew, if I did 10 emails a day and I followed up with enough people every day, in a week's time I had this, and those numbers worked out. Last thing, and then you can ask me or shut me up. Go watch the movie Moneyball. No matter what, go watch the movie Moneyball and look at it from a network marketer's standpoint. And some things will just pop out, and it's so brilliant. I've actually done webinars called Moneyball, the Moneyball Growth Formula. I actually have a training on that, where I took my whole business, and because of today's data, you can track it, and I could show consistency of how many people went to watch this sizzle video, this video, and the webinar, and show those numbers playing out. And it's just mind-boggling to see how consistent people can be and make the kind of money by just being consistent using the right systems.
Right, the simple concept, right? We love Moneyball. As a matter of fact, one of Daveen's dreams was always to see Oakland play in Oakland, and we saw the Red Sox in Oakland play out there a couple of years ago. Big Billy Bean fans, love the movie, own the movie. And that's when they came up with, the young kid came up with the idea, defense doesn't matter, right, that much. Whoever scores the most runs wins. You score runs by getting men on base. And that's really what we're talking about. Get them on base. Send them the email, whatever. Getting people on base. Me, you, and Billy Bean. Let's take it all. Mike, so great. Please give the best to Stacy. And I don't think you're really more than 8 years away from never doing anything. That son of yours, I saw a film of him playing football. His technique, forget about it. The Patriots could use him now. Mike, thank you so much. Peace be with you.
Mark. Appreciate you having me on here. Thank you very much. Seriously. Thanks.